Unit 4, Activity 2 is all about constructing fashion. So the last activity that we did was all about how fashion fabrics are made, and this one is all about how we turn the fabric into something cool. So some of you have sewn before, and some of you haven't. So it'll be interesting to see how familiar you are with some of these things. You might have visited a fabric store before and just been overwhelmed with the choice of fabrics, notions, patterns. There's these huge books and you have to pick, and breaking down the process of producing a garment is challenging, but it's good experience and it will help you understand how many different pieces and components there are into sewing a garment. So there's a couple of things on the internet that I want you to check out. One is this video here. And so I'm going to put a copy of the PowerPoint right into the content so you can play these videos, but I want you to just pause or check out these videos after I'm done talking. So the major tool that we use to create fashion is a sewing machine. There are lots of different types of sewing machines, so I'm going to gloss over how that works. And if you do have a sewing machine, that it really depends whether you want something to sew occasionally or something to sew daily, depending on what you want to do. So general purpose or hobby sewing machines are good. They're pretty simple to use. They have basic stitches like straight stitches, blind stitches. They might have a built-in buttonholer, but really they are the basic model. Electronic sewing machines are used by home sewers. They have an automatic needle threader. They have professional finishing. The next step up is computerized. They have a large selection of all-purpose stitches. They often have an attachment that transforms them into embroidery machines. These are, as we go up the list, they get more and more expensive. They also have a built-in buttonholer and automatic needle threader. And then industrial sewing machines. They are used for creating apparel in the fashion industry. And they're generally limited in the tasks they can perform, but they do them really, really well. So the machines might be designed to complete one task, so a straight stitch or just buttonholing or welt pockets or something like that. So even though each sewing machine manufacturer has designed their own sewing system, every machine comes with the same basic parts. So whether you're using Singer, whether you're using Brother, the basic parts are there. So whether old or new, it's an essential component that your sewing machine be reliable. You need to make sure that it's producing even stitches, because if the machine isn't stitching properly, it would be so frustrating. So read your owner's manual, understand how your machine works, use YouTube tutorials to troubleshoot your way out of things like if your thread is breaking or if it's getting tangled in the machine, and that should help. So the next tool that professionals use is a serger. Serger looks like this. A serger is cool because it is a one-stop shop. You can sew a seam, finish an end, and trim the seam allowance all in one step. So this is really useful for people who are doing quite a lot of sewing. And if you look inside a piece of your clothing, you'll see how much is serged. Serging looks like this. It's not just a seam, it's also like this. So you can easily look at the bottom of your jeans or look on a t-shirt and see what is serged. The serger finishes the end and makes sure that it doesn't fray and stays nice. Another thing that you need is an ironing board and an iron. You have to press the garment during the sewing process to make sure you have a polished piece. If you don't press it, it's gonna make it look Mickey Mouse. You don't want something that looks unfashionable and unprofessional. So if you use a good clean iron and an ironing board, you can press down your seams and it won't look sloppy. We're gonna talk a little bit about this later. Another tool that's very useful is our fabric shears. You should not be using kitchen shears when you're cutting fabric, and you shouldn't be using your fabric shears for anything other than fabric. So you need a special devoted pair of scissors just for cutting fabric. They're designed to cut fabric. They are not designed to cut anything else. So if you use fabric shears to cut your milk bag or cut a piece of paper, it's going to dull them. Another thing you'll likely need if you're just starting out is a pattern. Generally, you're not drawing out your own patterns if you're new to sewing. Patterns can be bought fairly cheaply, from $4 to $20, and generally you get a plethora of styles. You can see here that this pattern comes with 2 different styles of blazer, 2 different styles of tank, 2 different skirts, and 2 different pants. So it comes with a whole bunch of different garments that would make an outfit. With this one, same deal. You have this dress, and you also have this one, this one, this one, this one, or this one. So these patterns are organized in catalogs, and so then once you look through the catalog and you find out what garment you want, you tell the person and they will come up with the pattern envelope. Recommendations for what fabrics you should use are usually on the pattern envelope. So if you look at the back, you can see if it's meant for knits or if it's meant for woven fabrics. It will tell you if the garment should have plaids or stripes or not. And so looking at the fabric recommendations is super important if you're working with a pattern. It will also tell you additional things that you might need, like interfacing or buttons, to finish your piece. There are a bunch of different pattern companies that exist that produce fashion patterns. So the next slide is just going to look at a couple. Berta is the pattern that I bought that I'll be showing you later. It's pretty modern. It's European styling. Pants, if you're doing it, are styled for a shorter frame. So if you're tall, that might be an issue that you might have to consider. You need to add a 1.5 seam allowance for everything, unless the pattern says that that's not the case. So that could be a negative. Another one of the major companies is Butterick. It's a sister company to Vogue Patterns. Vogue Patterns is like the top pattern company, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. The design and the styling features are pretty good, but it's not as intricate, so Butterick is a good pattern to start with if you're new to sewing. If you're an experienced sewer, Butterick might be kind of boring for you, and you might want something a little bit more challenging. I'm going to skip down to Vogue since we were just talking about it. It's the top pattern company, and so other pattern companies try and compare themselves to, and they use high sewing techniques, so courtier techniques. One of the things about Vogue is that it is a larger fit, so you need to be careful with your measurements. So since you're hopefully an experienced sewer, if you're using Vogue patterns, you might be able to make some adjustments to the patterns, just eyeballing it yourself or using your own measurements. One that you can get in a lot of different places is Simplicity and Style, but I find these instructions are sometimes confusing, especially for a beginner sewer. It's tempting to buy a Simplicity and Style pattern because there's lots of different design and style choices and they're readily available, but if you aren't an experienced sewer, I wouldn't tackle it because you need good instructions in order to create a good product. So let's look at a pattern envelope. There's a lot of information on here. The front sells you the design, so you can see the model there. You can see the sizes that are in the pattern. You can see the pattern numbers. This is going to be something that's in the catalog, and then they're going to use the number to find the appropriate pattern. It's going to show you the design variations, so you can have like a cami, you can have a cami with lace, you can have just a normal cami, which is all one fabric. You can also have a blouse, a long sleeve blouse, billowing sleeves. You can have a more scalloped waistline. So all these design variations are there. There's sometimes even like easy or hard on the front to let you know how it is, and it might even include an estimated sewing time. The back of the pattern envelope gives you all the details. So if you're new to sewing, this is something that you would take to you would show to the fabric store, and they would get you what you need. The fabric suggestions are generally on there somewhere. So I would look at the fabric suggestions and make sure you have. It will also have the finished size, design drawings, and body measurements in there to help you out. So the back is where they give you all the information. There's no pretty pictures. It's just all business. So choosing a pattern that's right for you, is something that you're going to want to look at if you're making a garment. You want to choose a style of garment that you've purchased in the past and you know looks good on you, especially if you're doing it a first time. There's nothing more frustrating than spending the time sewing a garment and then not liking it. And also take the time to size yourself properly. When you buy off the rack, it's going to be different than something that's made from a pattern. So you're going to want to select the correct pattern size by actually measuring yourself. So we're going to talk about that in the next slide. So first you need to take your body measurements, and there's a great little tutorial on taking your body measurements in the content. So I strongly suggest you scroll down to the heading, how do I use a pattern, and look at that. After, you need to figure out your figure type. Your figure type uses a bunch of different numbers to come up with some sort of idea. So it's your height with your center back waist length with your body proportions. Body measurement charts are usually on the pattern envelope. And then once you've determined your figure type, you can determine your pattern size. So the pattern size is based on 4 measurements generally: your bust measurement, your waist measurement, your hip measurement, and your center back waist measurement. Comparing these measurements to the measurements on the pattern will be very important to make sure that you're picking the size that's closest to yours. Before we move to the next video, other things to consider when you're making a garment is the pattern ease. So you want a little bit of room built into the garment so you can move and bend and sit comfortably. So that's pretty important. You also want to make sure that the fabric selection is right. There is a right and a wrong fabric for a specific garment, and the pattern will tell you what fabrics to stay away from. They will do some of the work for you. So you want to make sure that there's harmony between the design, fabric choice, and clothing construction. You want to be realistic. If you're a novice, you don't want to pick a challenging job for the first time. For example, you wouldn't want to work with satin because it's going to be slippery and it will be hard to handle. Also, you have to be realistic about how you're going to care for the garment. So if you're going to knit a cape, you don't want to pick a yarn that would have to go to the dry cleaners if you're not going to dry clean. So if you never dry clean and you know it's not your thing, you don't want to pick something like that. The last thing that I don't want you to forget is the notions. You need to look on the back of the pattern and see those smaller items that are essential to the garment. If they're on the pattern, it means they're not optional. So make sure that you're getting those notions so you can have them on hand when you're in the middle of sewing. So we're going to leave it at that for right now. The next will be, once we've actually shopped, how we create the garment. So there are only 3 activities in this unit that have content, so you can tell that the videos and the content is a little bit longer than usual. So we will see you in the next video.